Imagine you are holding a silver mirror. It is heavy, cool to the touch, and its surface is so polished it looks like still water. This mirror is our anchor. Throughout our time together, I want you to feel the weight of it in your hands. This is the mirror of Persian connection, a tool not for looking at yourself, but for catching the light of another person's soul without ever saying a word. Picture a small tea house in the heart of Tehran. The air is thick with the scent of cardamom and the gentle hiss of a samovar. You are sitting across from someone you care about deeply. In the West, we are taught that if there is a problem, we speak. We use our voices like hammers to break through the silence. We shout, we explain, we demand clarity, but in this tea house the air is silent. No one is shouting. Instead, there is a gaze, a long, steady look that feels heavier than any scream. This is where we begin our journey into the world of Naz. It is a world where a quiet stare is not an absence of communication, but a flood of it. In many Western cultures, if someone stares at you in silence, it feels like a threat. It feels like a challenge or a void that must be filled with nervous chatter. We ask, what is wrong, or why aren't you saying anything? We treat silence like an empty room that scares us, but for the person holding the silver mirror, that silence is a choice. It is a position of incredible power. Think about the last time you were in an argument. Usually, the person who is loudest feels like they are winning, right? But have you ever noticed that the person who stays completely silent, the one who just watches you with calm, knowing eyes, is actually the one who holds all the cards? While you are sweating and searching for words, they are simply observing. They are using the silver mirror to reflect your own energy back at you. In the Persian tradition, this silent communication is an art form. It is the art of the unspoken desire. It is called Naz. It is a delicate dance of pulling away and leaning in, all performed with the eyes. When a Persian grandmother looks at a child or a lover looks at their partner, there is a library of history in that look. There is no need for the noise of a direct confrontation because the eyes have already told the whole story. But what happens when these two worlds collide? What happens when one person is using the silver mirror to communicate deep longing or disappointment, and the other person is waiting for a verbal instruction manual? This is the friction point of cross-cultural love. It is a misunderstanding of energy. One person sees a silent stare and feels a cold threat. The other person offers a silent stare and feels they are being deeply, vulnerably honest. As we sit in this tea house, notice the silver mirror on the table between us. It isn't vibrating with the sound of voices. It is perfectly still. In the West, we often think that power comes from the ability to project our will outward through speech. But here we are going to explore the idea that true power, the kind that can redefine a relationship, comes from the ability to hold a gaze. We are going to look at why a shout is often just a sign of weakness, a desperate attempt to be heard when you feel invisible. And we will see why the silent stare, the one that feels so heavy and threatening to the uninitiated, is actually the highest form of attention one human can give to another. It is the act of saying, I see you so clearly that words would only get in the way. Take a breath, feel the cool metal of the mirror. We aren't here to judge which way is better. We are just here to see how the machinery works. Why does the silence feel so heavy? Why does the eye contact feel like a physical touch? Before we move into the hard logic of how our brains process these signals, just sit with the silence of the tea house for a moment. Feel the weight of the things we don't say. The silver mirror is ready. Look back at the silver mirror resting on the table. Notice the edge where the metal meets the glass. It is a sharp, clean line. This is the boundary of the system. We are moving from the atmosphere of the tea house into the hard mechanics of how your brain processes a stare. This is the physics of the gaze. When someone shouts at you, it is like a wave of messy, choppy water hitting the mirror. It is loud, it is visible, it is high energy, but low density. Your brain knows exactly what a shout is. It's a discharge. The person is emptying themselves of their anger or their fear. Once the shout is over, the pressure is gone. A shout is a leak in the system. It is a person losing control of their energy. Because you can see the end of a shout, you can prepare for it, you can brace, you can ignore it. A shout tells you exactly where the other person stands, which means it gives away their position. In the game of power, the one who shouts has already shown their hand. But now consider the gaze, the silent, steady look. This is not a leak. This is a dam. Think of the silver mirror again. If you shine a light on it, the mirror doesn't soak up the light. It reflects it. It intensifies it. When a Persian partner uses the gaze of Naz, they are performing a high-density data transfer. In the Western system of logic, we believe that words are the primary way to move information. We think, I have a thought, I turn it into a word, you hear the word, you have the thought. It's a straight line, but this is a low-resolution way to live. Words are clumsy. They are like trying to paint a masterpiece with a thick house painting brush. The gaze operates on a completely different biological frequency. When you look into someone's eyes without speaking, you are bypassing the verbal centers of the brain and hitting the limbic system directly. This is the part of your brain that handles survival, trust, and deep emotion. This is why a stare feels more threatening than a shout. A shout is processed by the logic centers. You hear it, you analyze it, you react, but a silent stare, your brain doesn't know where it ends. There is no off switch. Because there is no noise, your brain has to fill in the gaps. It begins to ask, what are they thinking? What are they planning? The silence creates a vacuum, and the human brain hates a vacuum. It fills that space with its own greatest fears or its deepest desires. This is the system of Naz. In the West, we are taught to be direct. We think directness is honesty. We say, just tell me what you want. But in the Eastern art of the gaze, directness is seen as shallow. It's a lack of sophistication. If you have to say it, you've already lost the magic of it. By holding the gaze and withholding the word, the Persian person is increasing the cognitive load on the other person. They are making you work. They are making you reflect. They are holding the silver mirror up to your face and forcing you to see your own reflection in the silence. Imagine two people, one is a shouter and one is a gazer. The shouter is throwing rocks. The rocks hit the ground and they stay there. You can count the rocks, you can see the pile. The gazer is not throwing rocks. The gazer is a deep, still well. You look into the well and you don't see the bottom. You only see yourself looking back. Which one is more frightening? The person whose limits you can see, or the person who seems to have no limits at all? This is the power dynamic shift. The gaze is a pull system, while the shout is a push system. When you shout, you are trying to push your reality onto someone else. When you use the gaze, you are pulling the other person into your reality. You are inviting them or forcing them to navigate the fog of your silence. In cross-cultural love, the Western partner often feels like they are being stared at by a predator. They feel a threat. But the Eastern partner isn't trying to be a predator. They are trying to be a poet. They are offering a higher resolution emotional experience that words would only ruin. They are waiting for you to look into the silver mirror and understand the reflection without needing a caption. The threat you feel is not the other person's anger. The threat is the loss of your own certainty. When someone won't speak, you lose the ability to argue. You can't debate a look. You can't cross-examine a silence. You are stripped of your verbal weapons. You are left standing in front of the mirror, exposed. As we move forward, remember that the silver mirror is not just a decoration. It is a weapon of intimacy. It is a way to communicate things that are too big for the throat to carry. The shout is the sound of a person hitting a wall. The gaze is the sound of the wall disappearing. We must ask ourselves, why are we so afraid of the silence? Is it because the silence is empty, or because it is too full? Take a moment to look at the patterns etched into the frame of our silver mirror. These aren't just random swirls. They are ancient designs passed down through poets and kings, representing the long memory of a civilization that learned to speak through beauty because direct speech was often too dangerous or too dull. We are entering the marketplace of meaning. Here, we see how the history of an entire people created the silent power of the gaze. In the West, we often view history as a series of clear declarations. We have manifestos, bills of rights, and public debates. We value the plain truth. We believe that if you have a thought, you should put it in the town square for everyone to see. But on the Silk Road and throughout the history of the Persian Empire, the truth was rarely plain. It was a treasure to be protected. For thousands of years, people lived under the rule of powerful shahs and shifting empires. In such a world, saying the wrong thing to the wrong person could cost you everything, so the culture developed a secondary nervous system. It developed a way to communicate through layers, through metaphors, and most importantly, through the eyes. This created a civilization-wide appreciation for ambiguity. In a Western marketplace, you want to know the exact price, you want a receipt. You want a guarantee, but in the marketplace of the heart, the Persian tradition suggests that being too exact actually lowers the value of the connection. If you tell someone exactly how much you love them in plain words, you have spent all your currency, you have reached the end of the mystery. But if you show that love through the gaze, through the naz, you keep the currency in circulation. Think about the difference between a spotlight and a candle. A spotlight is Western directness. It is bright, it is efficient, and it reveals every flaw. It leaves nothing to the imagination. A candle, however, is the gaze. It provides enough light to see the person in front of you, but it leaves the corners of the room in shadow. Those shadows are where desire lives. Those shadows are where the unspoken becomes a playground. When we talk about the power dynamics of relationships, we are talking about who gets to define reality. In a civilization that prizes direct confrontation, reality is defined by the person who can argue the best. It's a battle of logic. But in the Persian tradition, reality is defined by the person who can sustain the most meaning with the least amount of noise. The gaze is a form of civilization, level high context communication. It assumes that you and I share a history, a set of values, and an understanding of the soul that doesn't need to be translated into the coarse language of the tongue. Now imagine a person from a spotlight culture falling in love with a person from a candle culture. The spotlight person is constantly trying to turn the lights on. They ask, "What are you thinking? Do you love me? Are you mad?" They think they are being helpful. They think they are building a bridge, but to the candle person, this feels like an assault. It feels like someone is trying to bleach the color out of their world. To the Persian soul, being forced to explain the gaze is like being asked to explain a joke. Once you do it, the magic is dead, the power is gone. This is why the silent stare feels more threatening than a shout to the outsider. A shout is a modern tool, it's a breakdown of the system. But the gaze is an ancient tool, it's the system working at its highest level. When a Persian partner looks at you in silence, they aren't just being stubborn or passive, aggressive. They are leaning on 3,000 years of poetic heritage. They are inviting you to step out of the noisy marketplace of words and into the quiet garden of the soul. In this garden, power isn't about winning an argument, it's about who can hold the space. In the West, we are terrified of losing. In the East, there is a deep understanding that by yielding or by remaining silent, you actually gain the upper hand. You become the mystery that the other person must solve. You become the silver mirror that they cannot stop looking into. Look at our mirror again. It doesn't scream to be noticed. It just sits there, reflecting everything in the room. It has more power in its stillness than 100 crashing cymbals. As we move deeper, ask yourself, is your need for clear communication actually a fear of the unknown? Are you shouting because you're afraid of what you'll see in the reflection if the room finally goes quiet? Take a breath with me. We have traveled through the systems of the brain and the corridors of history. Now let's go back to the artisan's workshop where our silver mirror was born. This is a place of quiet, rhythmic sounds, the tap of a tiny hammer, the scrape of a fine needle. Imagine the artisan. He is hunched over a sheet of cold silver. He does not use big, sweeping motions. He does not use heat to melt the metal into a new shape. Instead, he uses pressure. He uses a steady hand to etch a story into the surface, one tiny dot at a time. If he were to shout at the metal or strike it with a heavy mallet, he would only ruin it. He would dent the surface and lose the reflection. To make something beautiful, something that lasts for centuries, he must work in silence. Watch his hands, they are scarred and steady. Every line he carves represents a moment of focus. When you look at the finished mirror, you don't see the thousands of hours of quiet labor. You only see the result, a surface that captures the world. This is what the gaze of Naz feels like to the person who has mastered it. It is not a lack of effort. It is the result of 1,000 quiet choices. It is the discipline of keeping your mouth shut so that your presence can speak. In this workshop, time moves differently. In our modern world, we want things to happen fast. We want the ping of a text message. We want the instant answer. But the artisan knows that silver doesn't rush. The silver mirror asks you to slow down. It asks you to look at the patterns, not just the metal. Notice how the light catches the etchings. Depending on how you hold it, the mirror looks different. In one light, it is a tool. In another, it is a map. In another, it is a secret. This is how a relationship feels when it is built on the art of the gaze. It isn't a flat, boring conversation. It is a textured experience. Sometimes the silence feels heavy, like the raw silver before it is polished. Other times, the silence feels bright and clear, like the finished glass. Both are necessary. You cannot have the reflection without the weight of the metal behind it. Think of the last time you saw someone working with their hands. Maybe they were knitting or carving wood or tending a garden. They weren't talking, were they? They were in a state of flow. They were communicating with the material. This is what happens when two people truly look at each other. They stop being two individuals trying to win an argument and start being two artisans trying to create a shared reality. When we are in the shouting mode, we are like people trying to build a house by throwing bricks at each other. It's noisy, it's dangerous, and it doesn't work, but when we are in the gazing mode, we are like the artisan. We are carefully, quietly etching our intent into the heart of the other person. We are using the silver mirror to show them how beautiful they look when they are truly seen. Close your eyes for a second and just feel the cool, smooth surface of that mirror in your mind. No one is asking anything of you right now. No one is demanding an explanation. You don't have to defend your position. You are just here in the workshop. The air is cool. The metal is solid. The silence is not a void. It is the space where the beauty is being made. In the West, we often think that doing nothing is a waste of time. But the artisan knows that the moments between the hammer strikes are just as important as the strikes themselves. That is where the metal settles. That is where the design takes hold. In your life, in your love, give yourself permission to be the artisan. Stop trying to finish the conversation. Start trying to etch the meaning. The artisan finishes his work. He wipes the dust from the silver. He holds it up to the light. It is perfect. It doesn't need to say, I am a mirror. It just is, and as you sit here, you don't need to say, I am listening. Your presence, your quiet, and your steady gaze are enough. The silver mirror is shining. Look at the silver mirror again, but this time don't look at the reflection. Look at the frame. If you drop the mirror, the frame is what absorbs the shock. If the frame is weak, the glass shatters. We are now entering the mechanics of the system at its most intense level. This is why silence feels like a weapon. This is the difference between weaponized silence and defensive noise. In a Western system, power is usually active. We think of power as a verb, to speak, to act, to move. When we get into an argument, we use defensive noise. We talk to keep the other person from getting too close to our true feelings. We use words like a cloud of dust to hide our exit. We think that as long as the sound is happening, we are safe. We are in control. We believe that the one who talks wins. But the Persian system of Naz flips this logic upside down. In this system, power is passive. It is the power of the frame. The one who remains silent is not doing nothing. They are performing a high pressure squeeze on the other person's mind. Think about a vacuum. A vacuum isn't just empty. A vacuum is a powerful force that pulls everything toward it. When one person speaks and the other person offers only a gaze, the speaker starts to lose their grip. Their words fall into the silence and disappear. The speaker feels a rising panic. They start to talk faster. They start to say things they don't mean. They begin to unravel. This is the secret cost of directness. When you are direct, you give away all your energy. You empty your tank. But the person holding the gaze is keeping their tank full. They are conserving their cognitive energy. By not speaking, they force you to do all the work. You have to interpret their eyes. You have to guess their mood. You have to justify your own existence. This is weaponized silence. It isn't a threat of physical violence. It is a threat of social abandonment. It says, I am so solid in my reality that I do not need to use words to prove I am here. Can you say the same? We must look at the biological cost of this. When you are in a relationship with someone who uses the gaze as a primary tool, your brain stays in a state of high alert. Because you aren't getting verbal feedback, your amygdala, the alarm bell of your brain, never turns off. In the West, we call this stonewalling, and we think it is a bad thing. We think it's a way to hurt people, and it can be. But in the Eastern context, it is often seen as a way to maintain dignity. Imagine the silver mirror is held between two people. The Westerner wants to tap on the glass to see if anyone is home. Tap, tap, tap. Are you there? Speak to me. The Easterner sees the tapping as a sign of a lack of self-control. To them, the ability to sit in the silence is a sign of being a grown-up. It is the system layer of civilization. If you can't handle the gaze, you aren't ready for the depth of the love. This creates a cycle of exhaustion. The Western partner uses noise to feel safe. The Persian partner uses silence to feel powerful. The more the Westerner talks, the more the Persian partner retreats into the gaze, seeing the talk as childish noise. The more the Persian partner stares, the more the Westerner feels threatened, seeing the stare as a cold weapon. They are both trying to protect themselves, but they are using different physics to do it. One is using the physics of the explosion, the shout. The other is using the physics of the black hole, the gaze. An explosion is over in a second. A black hole lasts forever. Think about the power dynamics in your own life. When you are afraid, do you make noise or do you go quiet? Most of us make noise. We try to fix things with words, but notice what happens when you stop. Notice the shift in the room when you decide that your silence is more valuable than your explanation. You are no longer the one begging to be understood. You are the one who must be discovered. This is the high-stakes game of Naz. It is not just playing hard to get. That is a shallow way to look at it. It is about establishing who is the center of the gravity in the relationship. The person who speaks is orbiting the person who watches. The sun doesn't have to shout to keep the planets in line. It just has to be heavy. It just has to stay in its place. The silver mirror is heavy. It doesn't move. It doesn't change its mind. It just watches. If you want to change the reflection, you have to change yourself. You cannot argue with the mirror. You can only look into it until you see the truth. This is the ultimate power. It is the power of being the one who doesn't blink. Look closely at the silver mirror once more. Do you see the fine line where the silver backing meets the clear glass? That thin, invisible boundary is where two different worlds have been forced to become one. This is the bridge of mist. We are moving into the layer of civilization to see how these two ancient styles of being the loud and the silent can finally learn to coexist. When we talk about cross-cultural love, we are really talking about a collision of two different survival strategies. On one side of the bridge, we have the culture of the spotlight. This is a civilization built on the idea that everything must be brought out into the open to be handled. It is the world of the contract, the debate, and the direct apology. On the other side of the bridge, we have the culture of the candle. This is a civilization built on the protection of the inner world. It is the world of the poem, the metaphor, and the meaningful gaze. For centuries, these two worlds traded goods but rarely traded their secrets of the heart. Now, in our modern world, they are falling in love. And the first thing they lose is their sense of safety. The Western partner stands on the bridge and shouts across the mist, "Tell me what you feel." They think they are being honest. They think that by speaking, they are building the bridge. But to the Persian partner, that shout sounds like a demolition crew. It sounds like someone is trying to tear down the walls of the garden to build a parking lot. Meanwhile, the Persian partner stands perfectly still. They offer a look that is full of sorrow or hope or ancient pride. They think they are being deeply generous. They think, I am giving you my silence, which is my most sacred possession. But to the Western partner, that silence feels like a stone wall. It feels like being locked out of the house. This is the integration. We have to understand that both people are trying to achieve the same thing, intimacy, but they are using different maps. The person from the spotlight culture thinks intimacy is knowing everything. The person from the candle culture thinks intimacy is feeling everything. To cross this bridge, we must stop trying to convert the other person to our way of seeing. The Western partner must learn that the silent gaze is not a threat, but a higher resolution gift. It is an invitation to stop talking and start observing. They must learn to look at the silver mirror and trust what they see without needing a label on the bottom. They must learn that just because a feeling isn't put into words doesn't mean it isn't real. In fact, in the world of Naz, the feeling is more real because it hasn't been diluted by speech. The Persian partner must also learn a new skill. They must realize that to someone who wasn't raised in the workshop of the artisan, silence can feel like death. They must learn to occasionally use a word as a signpost, not to explain everything, but to reassure the other person that they are still on the bridge together. They must understand that the threat the other person feels is actually a form of deep vulnerability. Think about the physics of the bridge. If everyone walks on it with a heavy, stomping gait, the bridge shakes. If everyone stands perfectly still, the bridge becomes a trap. The secret is the rhythm. It is the movement between the gaze and the word. It is the ability to say, I see you are silent, and I will sit here with you, and the ability to say, I see you are confused, so I will give you a word to hold onto. This is where a new kind of power dynamic is born. It is no longer about who is winning or who is heavy. It is about who can navigate the mist. In the best cross-cultural relationships, the silver mirror becomes a shared tool. The couple learns that sometimes you need the spotlight to find your way through the dark. And sometimes you need the candle to remember why you wanted to find your way in the first place. We are moving toward a civilization that is no longer just east or west. We are becoming a people who understand that the most important things in life happen in the space between the words. The Naz is not a Persian secret anymore. It is a human technology. It is the technology of presence. As you stand on this bridge of mist, look at the mirror one last time. Notice how the light from the spotlight and the light from the candle both hit the surface. They don't fight each other, they just blend. The reflection is clearer because of both. You are not losing your culture by learning the other's language of the eyes. You are just gaining a better mirror. We have returned to our small tea house in Tehran. The steam from the samovar is still rising, curling into the air like a secret. Outside, the world is moving fast, full of traffic and voices and the constant noise of modern life. But inside, at our table, everything is still. The silver mirror is resting right where we left it. I want you to lean in close and look at one tiny detail on that mirror. Right near the bottom of the frame, there is a single microscopic scratch. It wasn't an accident. The artisan put it there on purpose. It is a mark of humanity. It is the place where the perfect reflection meets the messy reality of being alive. When we talk about the gaze and the shout, we are really talking about how we handle that scratch. In the West, we often try to polish it away with words. We talk and talk because we want everything to be smooth and explained. We think that if we can just find the right sentence, the scratch will disappear. But in the world of Naz, you don't hide the scratch. You look right at it. You let the silence sit on top of it. You see, the person across from you in this tea house isn't waiting for you to be perfect. They aren't waiting for you to win the argument or have the smartest thing to say. They are just waiting for you to be present. They are looking into your eyes to see if you are brave enough to stay in the room when the talking stops. Think about the weight of the mirror in your hands one last time. It is solid. It is real. It doesn't need to shout to prove it exists, and neither do you. The power we have been looking for, the power to bridge the gap between two different cultures and two different hearts, isn't found in a dictionary. It's found in the decision to keep your eyes open. As you leave the tea house today, you will step back into a world that is very loud. People will shout at you. They will demand that you explain yourself. They will fill every second with noise because they are afraid of what happens if they don't. But you carry the silver mirror now. You know that you have a choice. You can join the noise or you can use the gaze. You can be a spotlight or you can be a candle. Remember that scratch on the frame. It tells us that it's okay for things to be a little bit broken as long as they are true. It's okay if the silence feels a little bit heavy at first. That weight is just the feeling of something real happening between two people. The next time you are with someone you love and the air gets quiet, don't rush to fill it. Don't reach for a word like a shield, just sit there, hold the gaze. Let the silver mirror do its work, look past the reflection and see the person underneath. The tea is cold now, the samovar has gone quiet, the sun is setting over the rooftops of the city, casting long shadows across the floor. Our time in the workshop and the marketplace is over. All that remains is you, the mirror, and the person sitting across from you. You don't need to say goodbye. You've already said everything you need to with your eyes. I've enjoyed sharing this space with you.